I am happy to have Automotive Seminars as a sponsor for the show. Now, if you're not familiar, Automotive Seminars is a diagnostic technician training company. They've got a website that there'll be a link to in the show notes. And what they offer is top-notch training to technicians like us in the field. I've been taking their training courses for years and have got a ton of benefit out of it. They've got top-notch instructors, John Thornton, Scott Shotton, Scott Manna, and every other month they've got a 2-night course that you can sign up for. Join in, ask questions, and afterwards, you've paid for the course, you can access a recorded version whenever you want. You can rewatch the class 2 years later in case you wanted some details on it, and that is a fantastic feature. So make sure to check out the website to see what courses they have available and what's coming up in the future. This podcast is brought to you by Jarhead Diagnostics. Jarhead Diagnostics manufactures in-house diagnostic equipment and storage solutions, as well as distributes for companies like Pico, ATS, and TopDon. One of my favorite tools that I've bought from Brandon and Jarhead Diag is the case for the U-Scope. If you don't have a U-Scope, you probably should, but if you have one, you got to get one of these 3D printed cases, has a magnet on it, has a full-size BNC lead that you can connect to, and it gets rid of the weak point of that scope, which is the mini BNC connection, which is pretty fragile. This case makes this thing nice and secure and makes it an even better tool than it was. So check out jarheaddiag.com. The link is in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by L1 Automotive Training and Keith Perkins. If you're looking for education on module programming, J2534, EEPROM work, key and immobilizer, electrical diagnostics, or drivability diagnostics, Keith has a website, l1training.com, that's got over 60 hours of training videos on all those subjects and more. When I first started out doing mobile, I utilized Keith's videos on module programming in J2534 in order to get my head wrapped around what I would need for the tooling, the computers, the software setups, what kind of obstacles I would be up against when I'm out there programming modules on cars. And it was a huge benefit to me. And I continue to use the training videos that he has on his website. So I strongly recommend checking out l1training.com. We have got Auto Rescue Tools and Isaac Rodell as a sponsor for this podcast. Hey guys, if you're looking for programming laptops, you want the laptop set up ready to go for programming control modules on vehicles, you need key cutting equipment, you need diagnostic tools, Isaac is your guy. Has all that stuff available for purchase, and the support that he offers along with the purchase has been outstanding. I bought some stuff from him in the past. I got my Dolphin key cutting tool from him several years back. And again, the support has been phenomenal. Helped me out along the way with anything additional I needed to make it work for me. Also, for the month of June 2023, they've got Autel updates for sale. So make sure to check that out as well. Again, that's autorescuetools.com. The link will be in the show notes. Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. Hey, what's going on, automotive world? Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping, and today on the show, I have got Matt Fanslow and Matthew Skundrich joining me again. Always love it when these guys come around. Great conversations. Today, what we're going to talk about is things that we wish we knew coming into this industry, or advice that we wish we would have
received or at least listened to when we first started our careers in the automotive industry, right? Fresh out of school or just getting into it. What are some of the things, if we would have been aware of, we could have avoided some pitfalls. We could have avoided some hardship or just made our lives easier, right? That's what we're going to be talking about today. And of course, both these guys have really good advice. So, if you're a younger person listening, you're just starting your career in this field, maybe you're still in school, this is perfect for you. But even if you're not, you might benefit from some of this really good info. You may be aware of some of these things if you've experienced it yourself, but you can always share this information or this episode with a younger person that in this field that would benefit hearing about some of this stuff from people who have lived it. So with that out of the way, we're going to jump right in.
I have the worst cough. I don't know, even at a shop today, they're like, we might need you to bring back a negative COVID test before we let you come back in. I looked at the guy, I'm like, fine, I just won't come back. And he's like, never mind about that test. I'm like, that's what I thought. Did that 3 times. I ain't doing that test again.
Is that the one where they swab your brain?
Yeah.
When my wife had it, the kids and I all got swabbed about 5 times for school and for returning to work, or for me to go to work. She never had a freaking symptom. 0 symptoms.
But she tested positive?
Yeah, the only reason she got tested was she was working at a inpatient treatment facility.
Oh, okay.
One of the, I guess patients, we'll just call him a patient, tested positive, very sick, like hospital sick. So that means everybody gets tested. Yep. Well, she popped positive along with many others. And, so now she's in isolation at home. We have it, not our house isn't that big, but there's a bedroom right next to a bathroom. So that became her area. And, kind of just waiting for the crap to hit, waiting for the rest of us to get sick. Never happened.
Yeah.
So, me and the kids all went in and got tested, all negative. She has no symptoms after a few days, like a week. It's like, man, you should probably go in and get retested. Maybe you got a false positive. And she goes back in, pops positive again.
Huh.
So stays in isolation. And really, after a week and a half, it's just kind of like, man, no symptoms. The kids and I have bloody noses from the freaking tests. Let's just roll with it. So yeah, none of us tested positive, and she went however long, the 15 or 16 days she was required to take off, symptom free.
That's so weird,
isn't it?
So
yeah.
So my case was different. My dad tested positive, and we had spent the weekend together working in the woodshed. I don't know what we were building something. Or maybe we were just cleaning it. Who cares? Anyway, so he calls me on Monday. Hey, I just took a COVID test, and it's positive. And I was like, well, I'm at work. I don't care. Call me later. And he texted me like, dude, I have COVID. You probably have it. I'm like, I don't care. I got cars to fix. So I finished up the couple cars I was doing. I actually wore a mask the rest of that day, which everybody said, hey, why are you wearing a mask? Because I'm like anti-mask. And I'm like, somebody at one of the shops was tested positive for COVID. So until I get a negative test, I'm just going to wear a mask. And so I went the next day and got a test. It came back positive. Well, my wife went with me. She was negative. So I went in our bedroom. We pulled our daughter out of school that morning. Didn't send her back to school the next day. And she tested negative. Well, my son is 3 at the time because he just turned 4. They wouldn't even test him. Oh, he's too young. We can't test him. Okay. So we're home Wednesday all day, all of us. I'm stuck in the bedroom. Wife just made me stay in the bedroom because our master bedroom has a bath in it. The next day, my son is like dead tired, just wants to be held. Like that little kid, like, he's sick. And my daughter's the same way. My wife's like, they have to have it. Like, it just makes sense because our kids, we lay down with them to go to sleep. So I lay with my son every night. What are the chances that the dude, like when he lays with you, he puts his head right here. You put your arm here and he hugs your arm, like, and I mean bear hugs your arm. Like, what are the chances I breathed on that kid for 4 hours and he doesn't have COVID, right? So my wife's like, oh, we'll take Brenda and get her tested. So she set up an appointment for like 24 hours later. Came back negative, but she felt 100% better the next day. And I'm like, guarantee you she had it, got over it. Well, she's in kindergarten. The school said that she has to wait my 14 days of quarantine before she can come back. 5 days into my quarantine, my wife goes, yeah, I'm not feeling all that well. Wife goes and gets tested. She's now positive. My daughter's 14 days started all over again.
Oh, man.
Yep.
She was home for 3 weeks.
Yeah, one of my friends is a elementary school teacher, and the janitor had, I think, wife and 2 kids, I think. Same thing, just like one after the other, but never overlapping much. So he ends up being forced to take off an insane amount of time. They have to raise money for him because, the school district or whatever is not going to pay for all that time off. And he never tested positive. He never got sick. And he's in the house, no masks. I mean, how do you put masks on these? They're young kids.
Yeah.
And they're all sick as dogs. And he's like, oh, okay, waiting for my turn. Never went positive and never got sick. Crazy.
Yeah.
Must be all the chemicals.
That's what I said.
It's all that disinfectant he's been spraying.
Yeah, my wife had it in November, and I don't know, she had a headache for a day, but she did the quarantine, and I had to stay away from school. They wouldn't let me on campus, obviously. But I went and got tested, and mine came up negative. I had no symptoms, and I get shops calling me every day. I tell them, I was like, hey, my wife tested positive. I tested negative. I don't have any symptoms. They're like, we don't care. Just come fix the car. We'll park it outside. Like nobody cared in the shop scenario anyways. I don't know what you guys have seen, but like in the actual shops, and I mean, this is going back a little ways, like last year, but when you're back with the techs, there wasn't a single person wearing masks anywhere. No. Maybe up front, but that was about it.
Up front, everybody was supposed to wear masks, and I shouldn't say supposed to. Everybody did.
Yeah.
Whether they believed in it or not, I didn't care. It was all about perception of the client.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. You got to represent. You're wearing the shirt. I don't care if you're at a restaurant, wherever. Put the mask on. If you're representing the company, especially at the company in the waiting area. But you got in the back. Maybe if they were working right next to each other for an extended period of time, maybe one of them might throw a mask on just in case. But it was a non-issue. One guy tested positive. He was sick for a couple, 2-3 days, and then he was symptom free and came back. So.
Now, my symptoms were about once an hour. I found it super hard to breathe. Like, to the point where I was actually legitimately concerned. I could tell I was breathing, but it was like somebody stuck a 45-pound weight on my chest, and it would last about 5 minutes.
That would suck.
Yeah.
And it's a little scary, but I was like, whatever. I actually got enough concerned that I went and bought the little oxygen meter to stick on your finger. Because I'm like, if it's getting low, I may just like have my wife take me to the hospital. Who knows? Yeah. It never dropped below 99%, even when I had those like weird attacks. Yeah, I just think it was a muscle spasm, to be honest with you. But I was also super tired. Like, I had no energy. But I had shops bringing cars and dropping them off in the driveway. Hey, can you calibrate this ADAS? Hey, can you look at this? And I told them I had COVID and I couldn't leave the house. So like, whatever, you got a driveway, we'll drop them off. Call us when you're done. And so my wife was watching and I was watching. They'd bring the COVID gun, the battery COVID gun. And they'd spray the car and close the door and wait a couple minutes. And 2 people would chit chat. And then they'd take the car and leave. And I'd send them a bill. So I worked a little bit, but not much.
Isn't that just the auto industry though? Like, it doesn't matter what ailment you have or injury you have. these cars got to get fixed. You got to get in here. Oh, I broke my leg. Okay, well, can you be in tomorrow and fix these cars?
I sprained my ankle and refused to admit I sprained my ankle, despite the fact that I called my wife on her cell phone from the back dock. I stepped off my back dock wrong, holding a real heavy bag, and I mean, I couldn't walk. I was crying. It hurt so bad. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Just give it a couple of minutes, And then finally, like, the shock hit me, and I had no pain. So I walked in the house. I'm like, I'm going to work. I put my boots on and went to a job. I, called her crying. I'm like, I don't know if I can drive home. It was so sore. And then she's like, well, I didn't go to work knowing you'd be back. So she took me up, and they're like, yeah, you sprained it pretty bad. You need to go home. Don't walk on it for 3 days. I'm calling everybody. Oh, I sprained my ankle. I can't do anything for 3 days. They're like, we'll pick you up and drag you here. Just come fix this car.
Yep.
You don't have to walk. We'll push you in a wheelchair.
Well, so this was your idea, Skundrich, just so everybody's aware. No, I thought it was a really good idea, actually, is we could go over 5 or roughly 5. I realized after last time,
It's
the numbers don't really mean anything. But the 5 things you wish you would have known or somebody would have told you when you started out in this field or down your career path. And I thought that was a really good idea. I mean, for young people listening or people that are just starting out, but I mean, honestly, just anybody in this industry, it's good to hear perspective from other people, things they didn't realize right away and advice they wish they would have gotten sooner. So yeah, I think this will be maybe a good topic.
I already know my first one.
You might as well go.
I want to
Probably
go.
the same as mine.
No, I doubt it.
Oh.
Mine's kind of odd because I was giving this advice to somebody. There's a girl who works at a Firestone, and she's really kind of wanting to learn the industry, but nobody will mentor her because she's a girl. And so her thing now is to buy nice tools to show that she's willing to put in the effort, right? Because everybody looks at a toolbox. Oh, you got a big toolbox. I looked at her and I'm like, do not buy a Snap-on toolbox. It's not worth the money. I'm like, I wish somebody would have told me it is never worth the money to buy a Snap-on toolbox. It's just not. Mine now sits home in my garage. It's like a $7,000 box that I bought. And I'm like, what do and there's so many quality boxes out there now. You don't need a name brand toolbox. It just holds your tools, man. It doesn't make you a penny. Now,
yep.
I will say, buy a Snap-on hand ratchets and hand tools. The sockets are well worth the money.
Yeah.
The toolbox? No, do not buy an expensive toolbox. It's not worth it.
See, I was going to go the opposite a little bit, but not in agreement with what you brought up. Secondly, is when I was in school, I wish they would have had a tech or one of the instructors would have just taken us aside and leveled with us and just said, I'm not supposed to be brand conscious here. Those guys out there, those truck guys, they're good guys, but if this is going to be your chosen profession, use that discount to your advantage and invest in the Snap-on tool set. Because I didn't. I didn't
when you were in school?
No, I didn't want to commit, so I bought the cheap from the Napa. We had a Napa store at the time. We don't anymore, but at the time we had Napa, and it was inexpensive. And I'm like, a socket's got to be a socket, a wrench has got to be a wrench. So how freaking bright I was, and that's what I got. Well, okay, through school, no biggie. Other kids had Craftsman stuff, and other ones went for the Snap-on stuff. And okay, out of all those kids, I'm the only one left, fixing cars for a living in the trade at all. But you get into a shop environment, and all of a sudden you're borrowing sockets because, your 10 millimeter won't reach down inside of something, a recess or something.
Right.
My Napa one or my Craftsman one or even Matco wouldn't go down into that recess. Snap-on did. And this wrench would slip. I can't really get a socket on it, and it's got to be a wrench. Borrow somebody's flex drive. Doesn't slip. Works fine.
Flank drive.
Yeah, so now all those tools I bought to begin with are in my garage. That's what I use on lawnmowers and crap. and I had to rebuy all the Snap-on stuff at full price. And it's just like, you idiot. If they'd have just taken you aside and said, you know what, it might hurt a little bit. If you're going to stay in this, you're ahead of the game. If you're not going to stay into this, you're getting this huge discount, something to the tune of 50% off. You can turn around and sell it. Yeah, you can turn around and sell them, either break even or profit a little bit. And nobody did that. Nobody just kind of brought me over, or not just me, everybody just brought you over to the side and said, hey, just think about this for a minute. Man, I would have done it in a heartbeat. And in retrospect, it's kind of one of those beat your head against the wall type things. Just like, dumb. Just so dumb.
So I was very lucky when I was going to Universal Technical Institute. They offered that 50% off, and I was kind of in the field, right? Like I was detailing cars, and then when I didn't have cars to detail, I'd work at the mechanic shop. So like I always had something I was doing. And my dad's like, hey, didn't you say they offer you like a discount on the Snap-on tools? I'm like, yeah, it's like 50%. He's like, why don't you buy a bunch of tools now, man? It'd be worth it if you stay in this. And I'm like, I ain't spending that kind of money. It's stupid for a socket. Well, my dad knew people who were in the industry, and they kind of had given my dad advice. No, he needs to buy them now. And so I went and talked to the Snap-on guy there, because we had a guy there. And I said, hey, my dad wants to know, how much can I buy? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if I put a list together and it's $30,000, can I buy that? And he's like, no, you're limited to $10,000 of the discounted price. And then if you bought certain things, we got like a free $1,000, right? So you basically could get $11,000 worth of tools. I remember he's like, but your free $1,000 tool can only be one tool, so make it an expensive one. I got the Snap-on BJP1 set. It had just come out. It was like nice. $750, and I was like, yep, that'll be my free one. And I did. I went in like 2 weeks later, and I was like, here's my list. I spent $9,998, and my dad co-signed Snap-on credit with me, because he's like, this will be the best money I've ever helped you spend. And to this day, he was right, because I bought all my sockets, my wrenches. Snap-on had an 8 to 36 millimeter wrench set. They weren't the flank drive; they were the regular. But that set paid for itself when it came to doing alignments and AC jobs. It was totally, yeah, you're right. If you're in school, spend the money on tools right now. It will woefully pay for itself.
Yep.
Yeah, and you got to be careful though. Then, once you get out, you got to consider the spending, because the thing that I saw a lot was younger technicians or fresh technicians coming to Firestone, and maybe they hadn't even been through school. They're just hired here. You're going to do tires and oil changes, and they kind of got a feel for it. And now they want to send them some, brakes and suspension. So they're buying tools, and the guys on the trucks, and I realize it's their jobs, they're salesmen, but they'll get them those credit accounts, and they'll get them in all kinds of debt. And I hated to see that, because I saw a lot of people that would get to a point, and Firestone's got a lot of turnover, but I know a lot of shops do. And now all of a sudden they got a $10,000 box that is empty because they don't have that many tools, and then they leave to go do something else. They leave the industry, and they got this huge bill. So I'm always, with my students, I tell them, be very cautious on dumping. And I 100% agree about the toolbox thing. I had the dumpiest toolbox, and actually I should say toolboxes, because I had two ones that I slapped together to make a big toolbox, because I didn't want to spend any money on a box. If I had $1,000 spent on tools, it's gonna be on tools that make me money, not my box, because it doesn't do anything for me. As long as it locks, that's all I need.
The only reason I own a Snap-on toolbox is because I had gotten married. Sears was no longer really around here. Like, we had a Sears, but they didn't have the small 8-drawer cabinets I had anymore, and I was out of room. And the Snap-on guy says, hey man, you know that box you're looking at my truck at today? I was like, yeah, why? What happened? He's like, I didn't lock it and went around a corner, and I dented every drawer because it opened. He's like, I'll give it to you at 45% off. And so I called my wife, and I'm like, hey, it's a pretty good deal. It's like triple the room I have, but it's still like I think it was like $6,000 or something before tax. So with tax, it was like $7,000. And I was like, what do you think? And she's like, why is a toolbox so much money? And I'll never forget. We drove over to the local Wawa, met the Snap-on guy, and she was looking at the toolbox about the thing that I was about to spend like $7,000 on. And she's like, well, you need it for work. You might as well get it. So I bought it. But I mean, if he wouldn't have given me a deal on it because he dented the drawers, I wouldn't have bought it. And what was funny is right after I bought it, 2 weeks later, he come into the shop. He's like, oh, I got all your new drawers. I'm like, what? And he's like, oh, I can't warranty them on the truck till it's sold. So then he warrantied out all the dented drawers. So I'm like, sweet.
Nice.
So it worked out for me. But that's the only reason I bought it, right? Like, but I was you. I had, and I hate my toolbox now because if I need to move it, it's a pain in the ass.
Yep.
I mean, it's a triple bank. It weighs 700 pounds empty. But my Sears one, me and Fanslow, we could pick it up, throw it in the bed of a pickup truck, you know, and I had 3 of them, and you just pick them all up individually, strap them down, you can move them. I don't know. I am hindsight. I wish I wouldn't have bought it, especially now that I went mobile. I really wish I wouldn't have bought it.
I don't know what this says about our industry, but I remember our local tool guys that would come around, the Cornwall guy, and I don't remember if it was a Snap-on or Mac, but it doesn't matter. So they have these big trucks and everything. And when they'd sell a toolbox, they made a point in their sales pitch that they would move that box for free if you were going to another local shop. That was part of the deal. If you bought a toolbox from them, they would do it. They'll come pick up your box for you. I don't know what that says about our industry that's that common, but it's tough to get them around. That's for sure.
And even like I moved from my Tire Kingdom to A1 Automotive in Longwood. It was a 50-minute drive, and the guy's like, I'm not moving your box. That's ridiculous, because he doesn't even service that area. But the one guy there was really old, and he retired. Well, the tool truck guy came, picked up his box, and moved it to his house. But he had triple bank, a top cabinet, and I was like, I bet you moving that thing's $300 or $400 as a tow bill. I don't know what it costs, because when I moved mine, I have a buddy with a lowboy trailer. We just pushed it on there and strapped it down, and I drove it. But I'm like, I bet you moving a box is $300 or $400, and people don't take that into account when they buy that 96-inch triple bank Epic, you know, with the power bank charger on it. You know, it's a pain to move.
Yeah, and just like you were saying, Sean, off the top of my head, I can think of 3 younger techs. Some of them had like some experience, so they weren't like fresh out of school. Mm-hmm. But man, you know, trying to coach them up on don't go on that tool truck and start buying. You know, we have some basic sets for you. We have some stuff so you can work. And then whatever you need, you know, here's the shop toolbox. And then when you're constantly borrowing a single thing, think about buying it. And if you can, pay for it outright. Like, don't get much of a truck account going.
Right.
And, you know, 3 out of 3, they freaking go and do it. And just like you said, like the magic number is 10 grand. That's the magic freaking number. Toolboxes, tools, impacts. I mean, just like they went crazy, almost like they were sold on low interest and $20, $25 a week payments, or $50 a week, some whatever the number ends up being. I don't know what it is,
right.
But so then I have to take the tool guys aside, and because they can't trust the employees, and just basically ask them to give them a year before they really sell them much of anything. No truck accounts or credit accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the young guys, like jeepers, crammy, let them get a few months of work under their belt and making an income and figuring out what they need, instead of just, man, it's like they hand them the catalog and make their wish list, and that, like, they hand them the wish list. I think some of the tool guys have a legal pad type size thing with the tools that you wish for, and the next thing you know, it's like, oh, we can make that happen for $30 a week. Really? $30 a week
until the end of time.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen a meme of the Snap-on truck parked at the cemetery.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's like $30 a week with this truck, $30 a week with that truck, $30
Yeah.
a week with that truck, and now it's $90 a week, and they're like, "Holy crap, I'm broke."
Adds up quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my big purchase, because like I said, I was working at a shop. When I started going to school for it, I didn't detail at all. I just fully fixed cars. So I had bought in a cheap Snap-on or Craftsman 300-piece tool set just to do stuff. And so I kind of knew what I was borrowing all the time, sockets, ratchets. So my 10 grand did not include any boxes. That was purely hand tools, wrenches, sockets, ratchets. I bought standard and metric, 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch. And I even bought chrome 1/2 inch standard metric, and I bought impact standard metric in 1/2 inch. I mean, that stuff adds up. I mean, them sockets are ridiculous today. I bought all the Torx bits, all those specialty little bits that you saw all the time because it was 50% off. So my 10 grand I felt was super well spent. I mean, the oddball thing was like I bought my own tap set, right? Because I'm like, oh, the Snap-on tap set would be nice to have. If I ever break a bolt, I don't have to worry about it. I know I'll have the tap. So there was some oddities in there, but they're things that because I worked in the industry and I had borrowed my boss's, maybe not 3 times, but it was I borrowed it enough to go, well, at 50% off, I know later down the road I'll appreciate having that. So I'll go ahead and spend that money now. And I had really thought about this list, and I had asked other people, and I will say that most of my professors, or call them professors because I don't know, that's just a college thing, but most of the instructors at UTI, like I brought in my list for a couple days, like, hey man, I'm thinking about buying this. What do you think? And there was a couple of them who were like, dude, don't even buy standard stuff. You don't need it. Like, how often do you work in something standard? Well, I was going in 2005, and I was like, well, we still kind of see it out in St. Cloud, and so I bought it. But they were right. I should have listened and not bought it because I think a year later I never used it after that.
I don't know. Up here, I ended up using my standard stuff all the time, but we'd get like equipment and stuff like lawnmowers and snowmobiles and 4-wheelers and a lot of that stuff. But probably now it's metric, but back then it was standard. But I was like having that 1/2 inch that would cover for a 13 when I was, almost stripped out. I'll get the 1/2 inch on there. I knew all the size correlations between the two, but yeah.
Yep, same here. It's even now, I still once in a while have to go grab standard stuff, especially in the summer when the old cars come out. A lot of them are still, or not still, but a lot of them are standard, not metric. So
yeah, if you hit your metric hard enough, it'll go into a standard size nut.
Yeah, I think Skundrich would run into that all the time because nothing kills the cars down there. Up here, we have rust and corrosion.
His average vehicle is a 2020 though, so.
Oh yeah,
yeah, right. It's true. That's true.
Okay, so when I worked in a shop, I used them quite a bit. But now that I'm mobile, I'm like, I don't like if you go on my truck right now, I have all my Snap-on stuff. I don't have anything standard in there. Matter of fact, I tell people if your car is more than 10 years old, please don't ask me to work on it. The answer is automatically a no. Like when you're working,
it's like 80s day or 80s week, early 90s week this week.
I was born in 87.
Yeah.
You don't work on cars before you were born. That's the rule.
Oh, I do. not always like enthusiastically, but
listen, if it has a vacuum controlled fuel injector, we definitely are not working on it.
Yeah, for me, it's carburetors. If it's got a carburetor, I'm like, yeah, there's somebody that knows that better than me. I'm good.
But even those guys are going away.
Yeah.
They're Florida. And they're fixing all my lawnmowers. Right. That's what's going on. Oh, what'd you do in your previous life? Oh, I was a mechanic down at that old GM dealer. I remember when we got our first throttle body injected Corvette. Boy, oh boy, did I lose some money not being able to tune that carburetor. They're phenomenal on lawnmowers, so that's all I'm saying. So the next thing I would tell anybody, don't work on any vehicle that's been tuned, modified, deleted,
Oh,
hacked. Don't
Yeah.
care how you want to put it. If it ain't factory and you don't do that kind of stuff, walk away.
yeah. Especially now with the diesel stuff.
Yeah.
Not that I'm insinuating you should get into tuning and all that, but at least if they came in that way, you could get them back out. Now, what do? You're either towing it to some specialist that maybe has old workarounds, or the fix is return it back to factory, and that makes people choke when they get into the prices with. I mean, you're putting everything back on because it's gone, missing, threw it away.
Yep. Yeah, I quickly learned to back away. Usually my answer is if there's anything aftermarket, like a remote start or a security system or some sort of tuning, let's take it off the car. That's step one. And then we'll see where we're at. We'll move forward from there. And people don't want to hear that unless it's disabling the vehicle, which does happen. They don't want to go that route. They're like, well, can't you do this and that? Talk to the person who installed it. Maybe they can help you out with that.
And the worst part about the tuned vehicles is it's not the guy who originally had it tuned and deleted you're dealing with.
Right.
It's a second owner who knows nothing about it.
Yep.
And when you ask him, oh, where'd you get this? Do you have the tuner? Do you have this? Do you have this? Because you know that you could pull the tune out, update the PCM or replace it, and then put the tune back in if he has it. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's not tuned or deleted. And it's like, dude, you just blew black smoke for a quarter mile down the road. How do you not know it was tuned? Are you an idiot? And and yesterday, Monday, I don't know, maybe last week, who knows? All my cars are running together, so sorry. Transmission shop called me. Hey man, we need you to come program this Ford valve body. Okay. Well, and he's like, hey, can you make sure the PCM's update too? Sure, no problem. It's a diesel. I didn't even ask if it was tuned, right? Because he told me to make sure the PCM's updated because the PCM and the valve body all work together. Boop, hit the button, hit the key. Why doesn't it start? It started before I started. Hit the key again. Noticed it has exhaust temperature out of range. Oh, that's a problem. I lean underneath the truck and look, and I'm like, oh, that's a big problem. Yeah. It's still sitting there because they don't know how to. Nobody will delete it again because they're like, nope, you need to put it back.
Yep.
Damn.
I mean, that's what I did. I didn't even think about it. Never once occurred to me. The service bulletin addresses this issue directly. Firmware update. So
hit that button.
Hit the button. And then now it's getting pushed out of the shop. And that was before they really came down on them. So I was able to get a tune and save the day. But then I had a Jeep come in, just exactly as you say. The second owner had no idea it had a tune in it. It's a Jeep with a 3.7 liter diesel, Mercedes essentially.
It's a POS. That's all we need to know.
Yeah,
it's a POS.
Well, yeah, they had no idea, and it's set in throttle body codes. There's no throttle body on it, so there was a throttle body, not so much for throttling, but to create some vacuum for EGR. But that's all gone. EGR is gone. Throttle body's gone. Everything's gone. And it's like this code goes into a reduced power mode, and they want me to fix it. And I'm like, the fix is to put it back the way it was, and then figure out if there's any other issues. And I forget what the quote was to do it all, the estimate, but it was significant. Probably approaching a third of the value of the vehicle, I would say. And then in Skundrich's view, then it was at least twice as much as the car was worth. But per market value is about a third of it. And they wanted nothing to do with it. And I called the tune company that, had the tune in there. I figured that out. And we can't help you. You're going to have to see if you can find somebody that used to install these tunes, and maybe, just maybe, they've got an old file, or a file, wouldn't have to be old, but got the file that has everything the right way, and then they can upload it. So I gave the customer all that information. Here's the estimate for how we would go about repairing your vehicle, and I haven't seen them since. I'm guessing maybe they put a for sale sign in it and made it somebody else's problem.
Yeah, you got to know when to say no to certain things. And we all want challenges, but there's just certain ones that it's not worth getting married to. And we've all been there.
And you bring up a valuable point. You got to know when to say no. That doesn't just apply to these tuned vehicles. That applies to a job you don't have a special tool for. Like, if you're doing the Mazda timing belt and you don't have the tools to hold that friggin' crank pulley in there and you think, oh, I'm going to make it. Let me tell you a trade secret. You're not. I must diagnose 2 a week now. Oh, man, I put this timing stuff on there now. It doesn't start. Hey, can I see your Mazda special tools to do the timing? Oh, no, we don't have them. Oh, okay, we'll take it apart, find somebody with the tools, borrow them, put it back together with the tools, and it'll start. That'll be $150. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye. I don't even pull any tools out of my truck. Like, know when to say no.
Yeah, and it's not even special tools. Like, follow some of the Facebook groups pages and read how many of these techs are working for shops with no service information. Like, their service information is whatever they can Google, and then it's just figure it out on your own. And I'm not even thinking like diag type stuff. I'm thinking take it apart, put it back together, you wing it. And then when things go sideways, you're on the all these different enthusiast forums trying to figure it out. And
I miss the old Facebook.
But it just wouldn't the advice be that you got to find a good environment for yourself, and that would not be a good environment. Sure, maybe the pay is okay and whatnot, but how are you going to really start improving without having like the basic necessities such as information and, like you said, the tools to do the job properly? I don't know. It's almost like I don't know how it would translate, but it's almost like cultural as a mechanic from, I don't know, the blacksmithing days, when the horseless carriages first started coming out and the mechanics were the blacksmiths, that we get a kick out of the workaround, the building our own tools out of whatever's laying around the shop. There's some angle iron over here and duct tape and whatever, chicken wire and stuff. And I'm going to make the tool just like the picture on the forum, or
Sure.
I don't know what that is, but we seem to really get off on that.
No, that is long gone. I realized I lost more money being that way than just telling the boss, hey, F off, I'm not doing it.
Well, especially now, right? With techs kind of have some leverage in their favor, that if you're capable or even beyond capable, like if you have a good attitude and are willing to learn and can learn and find the shop every morning on time, that you're probably almost instantly hireable.
Find the shop in the morning.
Yeah, I like how you said
that was funny. I'm over here going, I have no idea what else he just said. I'm trying not to die laughing. Dad.
You're in a good position to improve your situation, both like very selfishly, like your income, benefits, all that, which is, that's good. But also as a professional, you can improve your situation and, man, start rewarding the, for lack of a better term, the quote unquote good shops, however you want to interpret that. I don't want to get into a big semantics battle, but these good shops start getting the payoff of making the investment in tooling, training, compensation, all that you're in a not so great situation. They're not interested in upgrading or changing some of that, whatever culture, if you will, or environment, or go to a place that will. We seem to be really anchored to bad situations too. And I don't know if that's a blacksmithing thing too. I don't know.
No, you know what it is? We don't. We're there. We're making money. We have a paycheck. We know what the paycheck is going to be roughly at that place. We don't mind the status quo of what's going on. Sure, we'd like better, but to uproot our whole system of comforts is just so much anxiety that we won't do it. So you sit there and you kill yourself for nothing. Like, learning to leave a job is well worth it. Now, I kind of went to the extreme. I'll tell you a little funny story about moving jobs. So I got engaged. I moved jobs. I was there for like 4 months. We got married. I moved jobs. I was at that job for a couple months. I moved jobs. I was at that job for a couple months. I think I had like 6 jobs within like the first year I was married, right? I just shop hopped. And it was probably one of the most eye-opening experiences to shop hop. Now, granted, the one job I left was because it was an hour drive one way to work, right? Like, that's just ridiculous to do when you're newly married because you want to actually come home. There's stuff to do when you come home.
As opposed to now.
So
you're being recorded.
That's okay. She won't listen. So I shop hopped and I realized that I was getting more money every time I hopped, which was kind of a bonus. But at the same time, I went from the shop that was an hour away where I was like, hey man, it says I need this tool to do this Maserati clutch. Do we have it? Yeah, we'll get it. Just push the car back. I'll order that tool. Well, do you think we're going to do more Maserati clutches? Because, like, seriously, like, it's a $6,000 tool. Well, we'll get it. We'll probably get more in if we have it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he'd buy the tool. Then I went to a shop where the guy was like, oh, I have Mitchell on CD. If you need anything newer, let me know. I'll call my buddy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not working here long. Like, that's the end of that.
Yeah, there's something to that, though. I remember reading an article in, I think it was Motor Magazine, and there was a columnist out of New York, Bob Cirillo. I don't know if he writes for him anymore, but he's the shop owner, and he would talk about some of his very best techs, very best hires were rehires. Like, you know, as a manager, shop owner, you can't be delusional in that you're providing such a great culture, such a great job. But, you know, it doesn't hurt to be honest too, that maybe you do offer a pretty decent place to work. And with that confidence, and hopefully you're, you know, accurate in that confidence, somebody leaves because the grass is greener on the other side and they go find out it isn't. Not rehiring him back could be a mistake because some of his very best, most loyal employees are rehires. They went and saw that the grass isn't really greener over here. Darn it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it must be the way the sun hit it. I don't know. But they come back and they're now loyal. Like, I had it really good. I didn't recognize it. Now I do. There's a lot to that, you know, and on both sides, from a management standpoint of the rehire and the technician standpoint, to go and try a few different things and learn, like, hey, you know what? This place is a really good place to work. Like, okay, nowhere's perfect, but this imperfection is way better than that imperfection.
Except for Fanslow's shop. It's pretty perfect.
No, it's so far from perfect.
Fanslow's there.
First one, I'm there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I want to work there. You're like my little hero. I look up.
Oh, man. So raise your standards. So raise your standards.
It's like Matt Fanslow, Justin Morgan.
Morgan would be way up there. I'm way down. Me and Bob Hype, we're kind of on the bottom.
I don't know him very well to like have an opinion about the guy other than his Facebook post cracked me up.
He's awesome. He's so much smarter than he will ever let on.
I'm so much stupider than I ever let on either.
Yeah. I got a whole bunch of people really whipped. They think I know They think I know what I'm talking about. No idea.
I just pointed service information. Look, it says this.
Did you read the service info?
And they're like, do you know what that means? No, but I read it, so now I know.
Make it up as I go, and lots of luck. Lots of luck.
I got one on my list here. So I don't know. I guess it's not totally automotive related, but it is for our industry, especially if you're a technician. And I tell all my students this, especially the young guys and gals that are going out to start and they're in their early 20s, is to take care of your body. And I wish somebody would have told me earlier, than I figured it out myself, but I'm sure every single one of us and people listening know or experience it themselves, have been doing this forever, and it's tough on your body, and you've got surgery after surgery, and you got slip discs and bad joints, and this hurts and this aches, and the surgeries start mounting up. And even if you leave the industry, it leaves your body in shambles. So I tell everybody that are starting this out, you can do this for a long time. It's still going to be tough, but start taking care of your body early, and it'll pay off in the long run. Actually, find some exercises. Like, honestly, go to the gym, exercise somehow, build up some sort of, muscle on your body, because it'll protect your joints, it'll protect your discs. Take care of those injuries early. All the other stuff, eating and sleeping and drugs, and avoid. This is what I'm going with, but just
Whoops, I took that way the wrong way.
It's something that when you're in your 20s, you can get by without observing it, without paying attention to it, and then all of a sudden it catches up to you when you're 30, 35, and then you're in a world of hurt, literally. And this job is tough to do if you're in a lot of pain and you're getting surgeries all the time. So that's just anybody that's listening, start taking care of that stuff now.
In keeping with that, is there anything in the curriculum, like be yours specifically, where and maybe on teenagers and early 20 somethings, it would just fall on deaf ears. I don't know, but where you take time to discuss and demonstrate how to lift properly, lift with your head, not your back, straight back, lift with your legs, whatever that is. I remember getting taught the carpal tunnel exercises for your wrists.
They have exercises for that?
Yeah. And I don't know if carpal tunnel is quite the thing it used to be because of the cordless tools. I mean, if we would, I suppose it'd be from the impact of them, but now the mechanics gloves with the ergonomics or the gel in them maybe dampen it to the point where carpal tunnel isn't quite the thing it used to be. I don't know. I'm just wondering out loud. But I know back in the day where there's a lot of ratchet work, a lot of wrench work where your wrists are turning a lot.
It's my fingers.
Was a big deal.
If I hold my fingers up, I don't know if you can see them, they're like crooked. Like this one bends over this way, and that's just from years of wrenching, and that'll never be the same. That's just, I don't know that there's a way to prevent that, I guess, but
probably not.
It's just goes to show it's tough on your body no matter what you do.
I never heard the carpal tunnel thing. I'm very shocked right now.
Yeah.
I'm anti-air tool.
I knew about it when I was really little from farmers and then really loggers. The loggers around here would call it white finger. And it was, the chainsaws had such horrible anti-vibration systems on them back in the, 80s.
And
stuff like that, it was a regular thing. They're all going in for surgery to get that, cut around the wrist. But that was super, super common. And then auto repair. And in school, they would talk about it and, stretch your wrists out and try not to twist your wrist as much as, reasonable. And
like do some safety stuff as far as, lifting, working above your head, kneeling on the concrete, all that stuff. And I could say it's probably not super in depth, but I give my guys and gals a little spiel before they head out, like talk to some of the older people and get a feel for what they go through, 20 years into this business, not to get scared, but just to be aware of what can happen.
Speaking of health, being in the body shops all day, hearing protection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody makes fun of me, but I carry my I have the Walker's XL shooting earmuffs, and they take 2 AAAs, but you can turn them on. There's a microphone in there. So if somebody yells at you like, "Hey, the car's on fire," you can hear them yell at you, "The car's on fire," right?
Nice.
But if the guy next to you is jamming out with his air hammer for the next hour, it muffles the sound.
That's a good
but
one.
Everybody makes fun of me because I'll go into a body shop with my shooting earmuffs on, and they're always yelling, and I'm like, "Dude, stop yelling!" And the other thing that's nice is, if a shootout happens, I'm already prepared because the earmuffs are on, so it's okay. We can, But yeah, I don't understand why techs are so anti-earmuffs. Now, I'm very anti-glove. I don't wear rubber gloves. I don't wear mechanics gloves. Like, if my hands are greasy, they're greasy. I don't care. I want to feel the nut, feel the bolt. I just don't like having gloves on. Now, granted, I'm in Florida, so my bolts are always nice and warm, and they're not minus 20 degrees, so my attitude might change in Minnesota. But I don't understand why people are so against hearing protection in a shop. And no, your headphones do not count as hearing protection. They're actually probably making it worse.
Yeah, the hammer is going. You got to turn them up so you can hear the music.
And that's the other thing. So I bought they now sell the Walker XL Bluetooth. So now it pairs with my phone, and so now I can have a conversation with somebody on the phone and hear music. But because it's an isolated dampening sound, I can still have the volume low enough to enjoy the music.
Yeah.
And then when somebody talks, it dims the music volume so that I can hear them talk. So I wear them all the time, and people make fun of me. And eye protection is the other one. Why people don't wear eye protection too is beyond me. I had a piece of metal in my eye. I had to go to the hospital. They used an electric magnet to rip it out. Thought I was going to go blind. You spend $1,500, $1,800 on that. You got to wear an eye patch and special eye drops. You're in pain for 3 weeks. Yep. You realize that eye protection was the best $5 you ever spent in your entire life.
Yep. My dad's only got one eye. And so I heard about it, growing up long before I considered being a mechanic, but it was just, forefront of my mind. Like, okay, if I'm doing something, I should have something protecting my eyes. And yeah, it's not worth it. The way that my coworker presents it to the students coming in, he's like, would anyone right here give me their eyeballs for $1 million? And I think majority of the time, no one goes for that. And he's like, okay, well, why wouldn't you put on a $5 pair of safety glasses? Because obviously the kids are the ones that are always have them up here or they're down here. And so that's, I am a thorn in everyone's side out in the shop to wear their safeties.
And I will say, like, I don't like the safety glasses to look at something.
Oh,
so
it
if
sucks.
the engine, yeah, it sucks. But if the engine's off and I'm not doing anything, I may take them off to get a better look, right? But if I'm doing something where I have any risk of something going in my eye, they're on. Yeah. The only time I don't wear them to this day is doing dashboard work. I cannot stand laying on a carpet upside down and try and take a dashboard out with the friggin' safety glasses on. I will have the dirt fall on my eyes 1,000,000 times before I put them on. I don't know why it is, but it is. I feel like I already can't see in the dashboard because it's so dark and there's 1,000 bolts, and then you got the crappy cheap safety glasses. So being honest, I don't wear them all the time, but I see guys with grinders in body shops and they're hacking a quarter panel, no safety glasses. I won't even walk by them without safety glasses on because I'm like, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that scares me. At least we don't have, remember the Fanslow, what'd they call those blades that flexed so you could get better fuel mileage back in the day? They were thin and at higher RPM, they'd flatten out so they had less resistance.
Blades on the
cooling system. They like bolted to the water pump and the blades.
Boys.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I know.
There's and for a while they were like all the rage because you get a little bit more horsepower out of them because at higher RPMs they straightened out and they were like some kind of aluminum alloy. Well, the problem was they were so springy, eventually it would snap and the blade would go through like the hood of the car.
What kind of car was this on?
It was the aftermarket fan blades. That's how they made them.
Oh, okay.
I can't.
I don't know the name.
So the reason I bring it up is I was working at my first shop, and it was 2005, so the car still had that kind of stuff, And we put a fan on a car, and the customer complained that it had some weird vibration. Well, I had started up, I was reaching across the fan, revving the motor up, and the next thing I hear is this doosh, and I was like, "What was that?" And the car started shaking. Boss ran over and turned it off. And I look up, and there's a hole through the hood, and up in the wooden rafter above me is a piece of the fan blade. And I'm thinking, yeah, don't ever reach across a fan blade again, because if I would have been leaning over the other way, that would have been the end of me. Like, that fan blade didn't care.
I watched a couple guys.
I think it was called flex fan.
It might be just a flex fan.
I watched a couple guys at Firestone getting a pressed in ball joint out. And they got the ball joint press, and they've got the biggest impact in the shop running on this thing, and it will not go. And then there's another guy over there holding the torch over to this thing, and it's just bop, 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 and this ball joint's not going and not going. And they're all kind of like standing around, one's holding the ball joint press, one's running the impact, one's got the torch. Well, the cap for the ball joint goes, not the ball joint still didn't even come out of this knuckle. It was, I don't know if I think they had the pieces set up wrong, so they were just pushing on the press, but the cap eventually went, and it came out like a bullet out of this thing and just barely missed this guy's head. I mean, if it would have had him, serious injury or death for sure. And it, I don't know, it's stuck in the wall or something like that, because it just was, and it was like a bomb going off. So yeah, you never know what's going to happen in this industry, especially if you're doing steering, suspension, exhaust work. It's dangerous at times if you're not careful.
I mean, we all pick on the guy for being safety conscious, but in the back of our heads we're going, yeah, we're picking on you, but damn it, good job. But yeah. I think it's like just this industry to pick on them. But I mean, I saw a car fall off a lift when I first started in this career. To this day, when I put a car on the lift, it comes up 1 inch, and I get on the closest tire, and I shake that sucker as hard as I can. Mm-hmm. I raise it a foot off the ground. I shake it again. I check all the lift points. It takes me 15 minutes to put a car in the air. Everybody makes fun of me, and I'm like, you know what? Never dropped a car.
Yep.
And
that's one you can get complacent with, because you do it so many times every day.
Every day.
It's so easy to miss that rusty pinch weld.
Yep. What's rust?
Or the pickup truck that you've gotten away with lifting improperly, and probably because you may not have quite the right hoist for it. So you've been lifting it improperly for not just that one, but trucks in general, pickup trucks, light duty pickup trucks for, years. But then that one time, there's either a bunch of stuff in the bed that you didn't check, or the frame is rusted enough that now it's an issue, and she folds in half on the hoist, or the stuff in the box rolls to the back, and now the truck does a wheelie on the hoist and slides down. I've seen both of those that way.
Yikes.
Yeah, so don't feel bad if people make fun of you for being safe. Like jack stands. If I'm working on a car, like it sounds really dumb because we have lifts, but there's been times where like I'll just take the tire off and sit down on the ground and do ball joints, right? Because I just found it enjoyable to sit with my butt on the ground, legs apart, knock out the ball joints right there. And I'd have guys come by, oh, look at you with 2 jack stands, Mr. Safety. Yeah, damn right. I ain't losing my leg over this. If you stay on the Facebook groups long enough, you'll see 1 or 2 guys a year get killed because they didn't put a jack stand under a car.
Yep.
Yeah, there's an old video. It's like Faces of Death or something like that. Or dude gets crushed by a car.
I want to call BS on those, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's true what you're saying in real life. That I don't know so much about the movie.
Yeah,
the movie series.
Yeah, right.
That crocodile one, just I don't know. It seems a little kind of
now I gotta Google this crocodile.
Yeah, I don't remember the crocodile one, so I'll check that out.
Yeah, not sure I believe that. There's a croc in a pond or something, and maybe it was an alligator. I don't know, but the cops are out there, the sheriff's department, and they got a hook, and I don't know if they got it baited or what, but he gets a hold of it and he starts pulling it in, and that thing jerks him into the water, and then of course kills him. Which is, I don't know. It's not generally how it works out. And I don't know. I just think it was kind of BS.
Okay.
But what you're saying is so the first place I worked at, guy brings in a T-Bird. So it would have been probably a late 80s Thunderbird.
Okay.
And I'm going to check ignition timing, but I can't see the mark on the balancer. So you jack up the front and roll under it and mark it with a paint pen. And of course, I don't put a jack stand under it. And that's not what would have killed me. It's the customer was there watching, and the mark is on the wrong side. So I yell for my boss to just bump the engine over a couple times. The customer takes it upon themselves, like, oh, I can do that. I'm sure they could have, but unfortunately, they felt like the jack was kind of in their way, so they moved it.
Oh no!
When they moved it, it twisted it, and it dropped the car on me. And the only thing that really saved me was my boss heard this as the car came down on my chest, and I'm on a creeper.
Yeah.
He hears that. So he comes on over, and the guy's like, what? He's like, he's got him crushed.
Holy cow.
I wasn't, I had never really felt in danger. I wasn't hurting. I guess I had a pretty good bruise the next day across my chest, but
yeah,
I don't want to over dramatize it. Like I wasn't laying under there going like, okay, this is it. Things are going dark. That never occurred. But I suppose it could have.
Yeah, well, it easily could, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you sit there long enough, I'm sure.
Yeah,
but...
so now I make a habit of using jack stands and don't have customers help. Even if I didn't, it's not like I asked the guy to help. But if a customer's like, oh, I can do that, I'm getting out from under there and getting the hell out of Dodge.
Well, that's good advice too. Yeah, don't get help from customers.
Or certain employees can, or fellow employees, I should say, or coworkers.
Another thing I learned about customers is to ask them if there's oddities about their old car. So I had a car I was programming a PCM in, and it was a stick shift. Well, they didn't bother to tell the shop that the bushings were worn out in the shifter. I've driven a stick shift my whole life, so I grabbed it. Oh yeah, it's in neutral. I hit the key. It's in gear. It runs forward. Hits the classic car that's on the lift in front of it.
Oh, no.
And I'm going, what the fuck? It's in neutral. And the owner of the shop comes over. He grabs it. Yeah, it's in neutral. And he's like, oh, it must have a bad clutch or something. And he's like, don't worry, it's not your fault. The customer comes in and he's like, hey man, there's something wrong with your clutch. He goes, oh no, the bushings are worn out. So you just, unless you know to and he's just like, that's something really important to tell your shop. So now when I see an older car come in a shop, when I was there, it was like, hey, is there any oddities with your old car? Is the shifter worn out or anything odd? Because it was a pretty expensive repair that day.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have to ask the customers. Like, your service writer has to know to ask. Like, hey, is there anything odd about your car that we need to know about? And if there is, the customer knows. And they're not even embarrassed to tell you. They're like, oh, hell yeah, man, my shifter's worn out. Feels like it's in neutral all the time.
Yep.
So, yeah.
If I was to add another one, it's something that maybe doesn't quite pertain to me anymore, but could have years ago. Unfortunately, I didn't learn about it until, I don't know, 2-3 months ago. Robert Dutch Silverstein was on, I want to say it was on here, but I could be wrong.
He was on here like a long time ago.
But he was talking about something very specific, and I feel like he was telling it to Sean. I'm almost positive now. It was on this show, talking to Sean, and I think it was just him, and talking about documenting as a technician, as an employee, what you bring to the table, and not no ego. Just get your ego out of it. But you hand out referrals. Referred to so-and-so, or you handed out a business card and you write your name on the back, and if you can get the customer's name, great. What these referrals, booking this kind of time, putting these kind of hours, just kind of document what you're bringing to the table. And then you can go in and discuss, during your reviews, or if you have to kind of force the issue of a review, or if you're looking at other employment, that you kind of have some stuff to back up what you bring to the business to make it money. Because that's the other thing, right? Your job too often is like, well, what's your job? Oh, I fix cars. No, your job is to make the business money.
Mm-hmm.
Ethically make money. And, your job primarily is probably to fix cars or diagnose cars, or maybe you have something very specific. You're the alignment guy, something of that nature. But it's what can I do to make this facility more profitable? And therefore, then hopefully that finds its way into my pocket. And, I think, and Robert's or Dutch, his example was, if I refer this job, this 4-wheel brake job, Mr. Owner, Mr. Boss, Mr. Service Advisor, because I referred that, it would make sense that I would be the one to get this, especially if you're on like commission flat rate. It would only make sense. So I guess I wish early on, just out of college, to learn how to document that stuff and advocate for myself. Not that I'm in a bad place now, but I think along the way it was rockier than it should have been. And if I was better prepared and had certain things in place, written down, documented, to go in and make a very professional, business-like pitch, that things could have been better yet.
Yeah.
And I would say that I think that was really, really good advice I got far too late in life. It was that on your show? I'm almost positive.
Yeah,
I thought it was just
that
him
was
and you.
Dutch.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you were talking about at Firestone.
Yeah. Okay. So when I was at Firestone, we had these reports that you could pull up, and it was mainly for service writers, but we all had access to the computers. But very few techs actually knew how to go in there, access, and you could pull up this whole spreadsheets of your numbers based on what you were doing, how long you were there every day, what you flagged. You break it down each day, each week, month, whole year, and all these different percentages and numbers and stuff, which is really cool. And barely anybody besides the people running the show and making the decisions even knew to look at those. But it was really beneficial to at least be aware of where you're at. What is my, effective labor rate? What is my productivity level and all that stuff? Just so, when push comes to shove, you've got that. You can print these off, you can save them in your toolbox. And obviously flat rate's not everything, but,
what I wish I would have learned kind of on how to interview.
Yeah.
So I'm a very honest interviewer. They're like, hey, can you fix a diesel? I'm like, and they're like, what's the, I'm like, can I? There's a high probability of it. Will I? Well, that's another story, But I never learned how to interview. And the other thing I like, despite my persona on Facebook, I don't like conflict. Right? I'll argue with you all day on Facebook because I don't care. But when it's you and I face to face, I'm like, fuck, I don't want to argue with you. I just want to go eat a burger, drink a Mountain Dew, and talk about how bad cars suck to work on. That's all I want to do. So I don't handle conflict well. And believe it or not, it's something I still struggle with. And Dutch has been helping me in my business. If you owe me money, I just don't show up anymore. I'm like, forget it. He's like, write him an email, show up, mail him the bills again, right? Go get paid. Yep. And I'm like, it's $500. I don't care. Right? I'll just throw $500 away. It's $5. And he's like, you're an idiot. So, I really wish somebody would have taught me that it's okay to have a disagreement, conflict with your boss, and how to handle it, because there is a way to handle it properly, ethically, morally. and to keep that ground of, hey, you're the boss, but I disagree with you on this. Let's work through this together and still have a relationship to where I can work here peacefully. But then there's also the thing of the interview where it's almost the same issue where you're in a conflict with them because you're trying to brag, but you don't want to over brag, because if you overpromise and under deliver, you're going to piss everybody off. But I very much under promise and then way over deliver, and I can't ever get a proper pay raise. So there is a balance to both those, and you need to learn that skill early on.
Yep. No, I think that's really good advice.
I just have no idea how to tell you how to learn that skill, because here I am, like 18 years later in this industry, and I still suck at them.
Well, yeah, interviews in our industry aren't very formal very often, so you don't learn those skills. It's just show up like, you got your own tools? How long you been doing this? What do you got for ASEs? Okay, when do you want to start? And that's it. That was my interviews in shops.
Yeah, they almost want to use a probationary period just to see if you can go. And, if you can, you're probably all right. Yeah, it's hard to really determine that in an interview, like, unless you're really focusing on the personality and cultural type aspects of bringing someone onto a team. But I think it's getting to the point where a lot of that stuff is shops are looking the other way. They just need, I don't want to say warm bodies. I don't know if the ones that just want warm bodies, that's a bad deal, but they're looking for somebody that can come in and, of course, work. And back to the same stuff I talked about before, right? Find the shop every morning on time, and be prepared to work, and quality and all that stuff, and probably just a willingness and capability to improve. That's what they're looking for, but it's hard to figure that out in an interview, because everybody's got those stories where it was the worst interview I've ever conducted, but I needed somebody, so I hired them, and they end up being a superstar. And then the other side of it is, man, I went to all these training classes to learn how to conduct interviews, and this person hit all the boxes. Like, this instant hire, gave them all the money they wanted, and they sucked. They were terrible. Yeah. So it's really almost, do I get a good feel from you? Yeah. All right. Let's see if you can go. And I don't know, the rules or laws, whatever, will be probably different state to state. I think Minnesota is 90 days, and we're going to use that to find out if you can really go and how you mesh. And if you're not going to make it, we can kind of cut ties with little to no issues or red tape or repercussions. After that, it can get a little more dicey.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that, because probably about year 4 in my career, I had all my ASEs. I was doing pretty well. There was a city job mechanic come open, and I knew the deputy fire chief, and I fixed his cars, and he's like, man, you need to apply. And I'm like, I'm not going to get the job, man. There's people way more experienced than I am. Oh, you should apply. Fine, I'll apply. Well, he went and sent an email to the guy, who was in charge of the maintenance program. Hey, it's a young kid. He's good. He's smart. He's got a college degree. Like, you really ought to consider him. He goes, I have lunch with him. He's a good friend of mine. If you give him an interview, I bet you'd hire him. So I went and did the interview, because, of course, it got me an interview. And my buddy called me after the interview the next day, and he goes, we got to talk. I'm like, why? He goes, that guy said you were the worst interviewed person he's had in 20 years. and I'm like, well, why? And he said, you were too honest. Like, he asked if you'd ever work on big, heavy equipment, and you said no. He's like, you just don't say no. You're supposed to say, well, at this time, I don't have much experience with it, right? Not just no. And it's like, yeah, but that's lying. Like, but so what's funny is they hired the other guy from my shop who answered it all correctly. He was there 2 weeks and quit because he knew the end was near. And what's funny is now I go to that garage to do mobile work and diagnose cars. And the guy who interviewed me, it's now a running joke. Like, yeah, the kid I should have hired was the worst interview I've ever had in 20 years. So now when he interviews people, he's like, well, I know everybody said that guy sucked at an interview, but he's probably damn good at fixing cars, so I'm going to hire him. So now he actually does his interview the opposite. When the other business guys, because it was like the maintenance department supervisor, you know, some office person, and, you know, some HR. He's like, when they want to hire the person, I tell them no, and I pick the guy that they don't like because he always turns out well. So it's kind of funny that it's worked out that way in my small town, but that's just the way it is. And
it's just like a first date, right? Like some people are just awkward as hell on a first date. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. You know, it might work out great, but you're trying to sell the best version of yourself. So you never know what somebody's actually going to turn out to be like once you actually work with them every day.
Well, yeah, especially the first few you do. After a while, you probably just don't care. You're going to be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here I am. Take it or leave it. And, you know, that's rough too and callous in some ways, but
yeah, and the older you get, the less you care what people think about you. That's another downfall. I mean, when you're 20 years old, you really want to impress everybody. When you hit 34, you're just like, oh, you're going for world certified ASE? Good for you. Call me in 5 years. Let me know if you made it, because I guarantee you're going to give up. Like, unless you're super driven, most people shoot for the moon to land upon the stars. But I'm like, there's no stars between Earth and the moon, so just give up now. I feel like Matt's in deep conversation with himself over here.
no, I'm just trying to think of like the other stuff, you know, like I don't want to be negative, you know, what I wish I would have known, because, you know, you went to college too, for, you know, or whatever, tech college.
I went to tech college.
College.
I went to college, and then I went to college again.
Right, but for auto repair, and Sean's an instructor. And
No,
in a way, I felt like I was sold kind of a line of BS. But the thing is, that was then. Now it might not be so
what was
inaccurate. You know what I mean?
What was the line of BS you were sold?
Oh, the income levels.
Oh, see, I never heard that.
Yeah.
So I went to Universal Technical Institute, UTI. I went to Bible college, and then I have an engineering degree. So to me, mechanics was my backup plan in case engineering didn't work out. But I was in church helping out, and they needed a part-time employee. And since I was paying for engineering school, working part-time at a church was great, right? 'Cause super flexible hours, right. Mostly on the weekends when there isn't college. So they ended up convincing me to go to Bible college to get that degree. And so, like, it's funny that my backup plan turned into my career choice and not the other two that I spent a boatload of money to learn. But the income I just always assumed was super low, because I don't know a guy who works on cars that drives a Lamborghini unless he owns shops.
I mean, I knew mechanics that did well for themselves. Not saying they're driving Lamborghinis, but you know, they were doing well. And then, you know, the numbers they're spouting off, and my parents are kind of like, that's a really good living. You should pursue that. And then I, you know, get into it, and then, you know, like you, it was going to be more of a backup. It was going to be more of a fall. This is something to fall back on. Like, cars are always going to break. They're going to need people to fix them. You know, no aspirations going in about electronics or diagnostics. It really didn't know anything about that until, you know, the first week or two of school, and seeing that scan tool, and seeing the it was OTC easy event. So that's a graphing program. Yeah. Well, it wouldn't matter. I mean, they had an old freaking Sun machine. That wasn't the modern piece of equipment at the time, but the school had one. So it doesn't necessarily date, but everybody knows I'm dated regardless. And but that right, and that's when that fire was lit. That wait, I want to know about this, and I was very intrigued. So that's how that went. But just to join the program and all that, and having the instructors showing these newspaper clippings and whatnot, and different ads, like you got them telling you like, hey, there's a really bright future in auto repair for you, and your parents looking at the numbers going like, geez, that'd be a really good living, kiddo. And then you get into the real world and it's not anything like that. But the thing is I don't know that that's so accurate nowadays.
It's still accurate. I can't name 5 techs that I personally know I could go touch that make $100,000 a year.
It's tough, but it is out there.
Maybe more by you, that would, because the cost of living is probably a little bit higher than down here.
Closer to the cities, right? And that's what I found too. If I go into the Twin Cities, that's where the money is. If I'm, 30 miles north, you're easily making $3-4 less an hour.
I'm in Orlando, and I can't name people making $100,000 a year.
Wow.
Now, I will say this: there's a shop I go to. It's a body shop, a big corporate deal, and there's a Spanish guy. He always calls me Poppy. It's got to be a Spanish thing, I guess. He's like, "Hey, Poppy, come here," because he's one of them guys that if I need a bumper off, whether he did the job or not, you hand him $5, he'll take the bumper off for you, right? Like, he doesn't care, and he's good. Not so good at putting connectors together, but he's a good body tech, right? So I'm like, "What's up?" He goes, "Dude, I'm going on vacation." And I was like, "Oh yeah?" He goes, "Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm going to go race my car." And he just finished putting together a drift car. And I'm like, "Oh, go have a good time." So he came back and he's like, "Hey man, let me show you my paycheck while I was on vacation." Because you just average your hours out. He made more on vacation in 1 week than I did working for myself in my business in 2 weeks. And I was like, "Dude, how much money do you make?" And he goes, I don't know, I do okay. I'm like, "How much money do you make?" He goes, I made $158 last year. And I'm like, "Dude, what?" He goes, "Yeah." And so I'm friends with the manager, and I was pulled, I went to the manager's office, and I'm like, "That guy made $158? And he's like, "Oh, he's going to break $175 this year." And I'm like, "How?" He goes, "Oh, well, he's here a lot on Saturdays by himself. If there's like a 50, 60-hour hit, he'll come sit here on Friday night, work by himself, get the car ready to go to paint on Monday. So Monday, he's already got 65, 70 hours in because he's here all weekend." Yeah. But he's single. He just wants to build race cars, and he has no kids. So he can make that kind of money. But I don't know anybody making that money that's like you and I. They're married, they've got kids, they actually want to come home. Like, that's my problem. And I can name shops where I know somebody's probably making that, right? Like, I know Dutch probably has a guy making that. I know Seth Thorsten's probably got a couple guys making that easy, right? I can name quality shops that have it. But when I hear guys going, "Oh yeah, the average pay in the automotive industry is $85,000 a year," I'm like, for what? The 10 people you surveyed? Like, right. Where did you come up with that?
Yeah, that's the thing too, is those numbers. You got to know where they came from. How did they get to that? Because depending on where you look, they're skewed arbitrarily, or not arbitrarily, but they're skewed low, artificially maybe. And in some cases, they could be skewed high, but usually they end up being skewed low because the term technician encompasses everything from quote unquote A tech down to quote unquote CD tech, lube tech, tire tech. So it just tanks the numbers. I don't know what they, electricians, plumbers, and all that, where they have the actual designations of apprentice, journeyman, master. The numbers are a little more accurate and they tend to seem higher, but it just seems like recently, maybe in the last, 10 years, probably a little long, that the technician auto technician, at least hourly rates, are starting to climb more in line. They got a ways to go. I'm not saying it's all sunshine and rainbows, but they seem to be moving in the right direction. And
But
flat rate seems to be kind of going to the wayside in favor of at least a base rate with some sort of a bump for either productivity or shop profit or something of that nature.
But hourly shop rates have gone through the roof.
Yep.
So I service a bunch of dealers, and we sent a car, an Alfa Romeo Giulia, the little BMW 3 Series Alfa Romeo. The guy parks it in his garage. He's an airplane pilot, and he was doing all his training to get recertified because of COVID. He was gone for like 10 weeks. Rats got in and chewed up his ABS module, so he put an insurance claim, no deal. We put it in. Well, they want a pressure blade, but the pressure bleeder, and I'm like, oh, I'm not doing that. Sent it over to the dealer. The insurance company called me the next day. Hey, man, how much you want to do them brakes? Bleed them. I said, well, I'd have to get the tools, And they're like, they want $275 an hour to bleed them brakes. And they said it was going to take X amount of hours. It was a $2,200 bill. I'm like, how is bleeding brakes like 10 hours? And the guy's like, well, how much is that tool going to cost you to buy it? And I was like, well, I don't know. Well, I have a pressure pot. I knew I probably had the adapter sitting at home. I just didn't want to do it. And I'm like, listen, $1,800, I'll do it. He's like, okay.
Towed the car rates. What the heck?
Towed the car back over to me. I put it on the lift, set up the scan tool, followed the procedures in YTech. I was done in 40 minutes. And I was like, $1,800 because that's what he agreed to. Handed him my bill. $275 an hour. My wife has a 2020 Ford Explorer, and so I took it in to get an oil change, and the guy asked about air filter, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. What's next time I'll ask. They're at $199.95 an hour. Just installing the air filter was like $40, and I'm like, yeah, I will take out the 4 screws myself next time. But yeah, I mean, if the shop's getting $200 an hour, there's no reason the tech shouldn't make 30 or 40 an hour flat rate. I mean, there's no reason not to. I mean, I get insurance is going up, cost of tooling's going up, right? These dealers are now starting to gear towards the EV. Their expenses are going up. But at the same time, these techs have to know so much crap. I mean, we were joking around about you working on vacuum controlled fuel injectors. I'm working on 21 Mach-E's, so I have to know how that works. I could care less to remember how a fuel injector works, right? But that poor tech at Ford has to know every Ford from the dawn of existence and fix it.
I don't even know if that's true because the dealers in town, they send that older stuff to us. They don't have anybody there that knows how TBI works.
Oh, that's funny.
Maybe very recently, especially the General Motors garage, but the others, they've sent me some late 90s, early 2000s evap issues, stuff like that. And I think I could list off a few things, and it's not like a chest thumping thing. It's just their focus is warranty and the customer pay stuff in that, 12 to 15 year range. Sure. It starts going beyond that. They don't want nothing to do with it. They don't have I don't think the GM garage has a Tech 1 anymore. I'm sure they have a Tech 2. The Ford garage, they don't have an NGS anymore. Or not that WDS would offer much of any coverage beyond IDS and FDRS. And the Chrysler does not have a DRB3. So I've got a lot of work. Or a lot is a relative word. I shouldn't even say that. I've gotten work from the Chrysler dealer involving the DRB3, or have lent them my DRB3 in exchange for favors down the road. So yeah, I don't know that they care about that stuff anymore. But totally going in line with what you're saying is in hiring apprentice techs, no arrogance whatsoever on my part. I'm trying to say this as humbly as possible, and it's not just me, just any of us. How much crap and how you forget how much you know. And not to take that and let your head swell up, but just you think about all the questions these apprentice techs ask you, whatever it may be, drum brakes, and you go over there and you know the answer. Take it from any level you want, mounting and balancing tires, road force balancing tires, and understanding what the road force is telling you, what the value is, and then finding or checking at least for bent rim, and then to the brakes, to the suspension, how to do a strut, be it the one you got to take out and put into a strut or spring compression machine, or GM had those ones where you take the top off and you'd slide the strut cartridge out through the top. But we know that crap, and the tricks you all know with exhaust and using a torch to kind of blast slots to open it up to slide a pipe out and slide the new one in, and just we could keep going and going and going from mechanical into electrical and diagnostic tricks. Just blowing he's not an apprentice, but one of my techs who's mainly doing alignments right now and undercar stuff, but he really likes diag. He wants to get more into that. So he's got a vehicle in that's got a misfire, Chevy pickup, idle, misfire on one bank. And I walk over and look at the data, and I just say to him, like, the answer's right there. And I walk away. And it's not to be a douche. I'm not trying to be a jerk to the guy. I'm not trying to be douchey at all. But I want him to look at the data. And I don't expect him to figure it out. And he doesn't, because it's asking a lot. And he comes over and he's like, okay, I don't know what you're looking at. So we go back over, and I said, just for fun, reset fuel trims. So go and do that. Boom. Or truck in this case, purrs like a kitten. And then, 5 minutes later, missing like crazy on, in this case, bank one. And it's like, look at your fuel trims. They're not, bank one is skewed very, very lean.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Look at your O2 sensors, pre and post cat. How is that even possible at the numbers? So I got one, the pre-cat one is really, really high, just railed high. And I think like not 900 millivolts high, like 1.5 volts high. And it's just stuck. And the post-cat sensor is down around 0. It's really close to 0. I said, how is that even possible? It can't happen.
Right.
So what's broke? Pre-cat or post-cat? And there's really two ways you could arrive at that. One is the post-cat probably doesn't have that much authority, so that you could get there that way. Or the fuel trims. Like, is the thing dumping fuel, or is it pulling fuel back? And it's going way lean. Okay, well, the post-cat OT sensor is reflecting that. What do you think's going on? Bad sensor. How has it failed? Probably a heater, OT sensor heater leakage, onto the signal wire. If you measured it with a meter or scope, it might be way higher than 1.5 volts because, the PCM is only going to report whatever. You just start thinking about all that and run with that, and not even arrogantly. We know a lot of stuff. It's insane.
The last thing I would say is I wish somebody would told me to come in on my day off or stay late, come in early, and hang out with a guy who's 85 years old, buy him a lunch, and say, hey, look, man, can you tell me something cool this week that you did? Or, hey, can I watch you do this car? Or, hey, can I do that car for you and you show me how to do it?
Yep.
Because the only way you're going to learn is by giving something. And the new generation coming in doesn't want to deal with the old techs because they feel like they're just some grumpy old asshole. But what the problem is they've spent $100,000 in tools. They've been way underpaid their whole life. They've got chewed up, spit out. Their bodies hurt because they didn't know about the health and safety that we talked about, right? So they've got 3 huge negative factors going in. Then they got some punk-ass kid who just wants to play on his iPhone all day going, hey, man, how come I can't make any money? Well, yeah, they ain't going to like you. But if you give them a cheeseburger and say, hey man, I know you got to pull that tranny out. Can I do that for you? But I'll do it. But as I do it, I want you to walk me through it, and I'm going to ask you questions, and you got to answer them. I guarantee you that guy will go, sure, no problem. You can even use my tools, and you're going to learn more on that day off or coming in 3 hours early than you will spending a week in the shop doing something.
I agree. That's it's almost like networking.
Yeah.
On
Yep.
a much more local level, but I found networking almost accidentally, but nobody. It was never like coached into me to try to form networks right away. With fellow students or coworkers, and then expanding that network, attending training, trying to keep expanding that network, using social media to keep expanding that network. But that's extremely important.
Yeah. I wish that was something I would have done more of, was hang out with the old guys.
Yeah. And yeah, that's not to trump what you're saying, because that's there's like my little rant that basically justifying what you're saying about pay rates based off labor rates going up, that the wages start reflecting that more and more. Not that they totally aren't, but that it still needs ways to go. That, I mean, the knowledge levels it's pretty ridiculous. And then to glean that stuff off the old guard, because this trade has never been that great about, I don't know if rewarding is quite the right word, but at least not punishing somebody for taking a younger tech under their wing. You know what I mean? Like some of the other trades, it seems, especially like construction, but even electricians and plumbers, it seems like, the new guy comes on, the apprentice tech comes on, or apprentice, I should say, comes on, and whatever, the personality attracts one of the, old dogs or whatever, veteran professionals. And they're like, hey boss, let me take the new kid under my wing. I'll take the new kid with me now. And they just kind of take that person under the wing, and they try to show them whatever that may be, framing, roofing, plumbing, high voltage, electrical, whatever, whatever that is, pipe bending. That doesn't happen so much in our world, because like I think I've said before, it seems like we've been so scared to charge an hourly rate and stick to it and try to get paid for the amount of time we spend on vehicles legitimately, right? We're going to get beat on a few where the shop's kind of eating a little bit of quote unquote on the job training. But for the most part, when we can justify getting paid, we should be getting paid. That we've shifted that over onto the tech's shoulders to produce. And it's not work 40 hours, produce 35 to 45 hours. It's, we really need 50, 60, 70 hours a week out of you. That's how you're going to get paid well, and that's how the shop's going to make money. And that, in a way, that's broken, because now who the hell has time to take the new guy under their wing? I can't. I'm going to get hammered here. I'm not starving over you, kiddo.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's just it, right? So every time I see a post, I'm looking for an A-Tech. First question I always have is, what's an A-Tech?
Yeah, that's a rough question.
Without fail, 95% of times, a guy who could turn 75, 80 hours a week, and he's here 35.
Yeah.
That's not an A-Tech. That's a robot, right? Like, yeah, hand me brake jobs all day. I'll turn 100 hours for you, no problem. Let me give you this 2021 Corvette that's got a misfire on cylinder number 3, and you're going to spend 4 hours reading how it works. Well, that's an A-Tech, right? So, and in the other industry, so my stepdad is a master electrician, so he did electrical his whole life. My real dad is a construction worker, and all my brothers do construction. It's funny because when I talk to them, they're like, oh yeah, I started this new job, I got to learn this new process, and this grumpy old guy's making me do all this BS work. But you know what the difference is in their industry versus ours? Both of them are getting paid their hourly rate.
Yep.
Right. So that old guy's getting his $37, $38 an hour, the young kid's still getting his 15 to 18 bucks an hour, and the job's just eating it because they know that in 6 months, my brother is going to be able to do pretty darn good job at what the old guy could do. Is he going to do it as fast or as efficient? No. But could he do that job? Relatively, yes. Right? So let's say it's making a staircase out of framing. Well, is my brother going to be fast at it? No. Is he going to cut every piece perfect like the old guy? No. Is it going to take him longer? Yes. But they can now send him to a job and do a staircase. The old guy can do a staircase. They've doubled their income. Where in the automotive industry, it doesn't work like that. It's, oh, here's a new guy, there's a lube rack. Well, what do you want me to do? Oh, change oil and find stuff that's broken. Well, how does he know what to find that's broken unless somebody shows him? Right? So then, then the kid just has to learn on his own. And then you're stuck in this caveat of, well, I only turned 12 hours this week as a lube tech and I made $50 and I owe the tool truck 100. So they don't stay. It's the whole industry is just screwed up that way.
Yeah, or somehow the veteran tech. So I know some programs are, what shop programs will say that if a veteran tech takes a apprentice, if you will, a green tech under their wing, that they get the of course the veteran tech's hours that he turns or she, they also get the hours that the young or the new person or the green person or the apprentice turns, but they're still taking the risk, which doesn't make any sense to me because they're pretty sure their name's not on the sign outside. So it seems like the wrong entity is taking that risk. That should be all on the business. They should be making that investment, not the veteran tech. Not saying that, we as veteran techs shouldn't try to pay it forward or pay it back, however you want to look at, and try to help groom the next crop. I think that's only right too, but I don't think we need to be taking risks and having our financial situations changed to do it, because what's the upside? Why not just make it right and then the shop can reap the rewards down the road, rather than, trying to figure out how the tech's going to make his money back, training this tech up. Like, oh yeah, you turn them into a good tech. Well, you can keep drawing on them for another 6 months. That should make things right. That just seems odd to me. Why not just the business takes the risk, and then down the road reaps the rewards of hopefully having 2, 3, 4, whatever number of stellar technicians of whatever levels of levels or specialties. That must be a Florida word. I don't know.
I find it interesting because being mobile now, I'll get a car that's odd and the tech's done spent, let's say 7-8 hours on it, right? And the only thing the tech knows is the damn car is blue, right? It's a damn blue car and it's damn broken, right? And he's swearing, he's yelling, and I come over and I spend 20 minutes on it and I'm like, oh yeah, I found this wire, it was broken here. Well, how'd you find it? When I first started 7 years ago in my business, man, I didn't have a lot of cars. I'd spend 2 hours walking through it, explain wiring diagrams. Now I'm like, well, if you want to know, take a day off ride with me. Nobody's ever taken that up. Not one person. And it's just funny because it's like, sometimes I wonder if they really care, or if they're just hoping I have some magic bullet, right? Like, oh, I pulled out the OEM scanner and it showed me right where this wire was broken. No, that's not how it works. A prime example of that this week was a guy called me and he wanted me to program a ECM in a Ford Fusion with the 3-liter, and we all know they have very fun V6 electrical problems. And I told the guy on the phone, I said, listen, man, it's this price, whether it fixes it or not. I don't care. You're paying. I get there, I ask him, what's wrong with it? Without fail, he goes, oh, I got these 10 electrical codes. As soon as I clear them, they come right back. I looked at him and I said, listen, I'll make you a deal right now. He goes, what? I said, you actually diagnosed the car? won't charge you a trip fee and I'll just leave. He goes, what do you mean? I said, PCM's not going to fix it. I said, it's not going to fix it. He goes, oh, you just program it. Okay. So I sat there and wasted my 20 minutes between 10 minutes of learning and programming it. Hit the key. And I'm like, oh, yep, guess it didn't fix it. Because I remember him telling me he had cam and crank codes, right? And so turn the key off, hit it again. Finally, like fourth time I tried to start it, it starts and it runs. I just leave it running. Well, sir, you owe me my money and it didn't fix it. Oh, can you diagnose it? No, I can't. I have a very busy week. I told you this beforehand. He's like, well, what am I supposed to do? I got a $600 ECM in it. And I'm like, I gave you a scapegoat when I got here that I didn't want to program it. I see this all the time. It wasn't going to fix it. That's not my problem anymore. And I kind of felt like a jerk, but at the same time, I'm like, you wanted to run a shop out of your house and you took on this job. That's like, I feel way less guilty leaving somebody who's taking on jobs they should have said no to and just walking away than a young kid who's going, well, my boss threw it to me and I got stuck, right? And those are the guys that I'm like, oh, fine, I'll show up late to the next job and I'll help. But if you're like a shop owner and you didn't say no or call in somebody to get some help, yeah, I have no care anymore.
No, to you guys' point, trying to get as much value out of your the people you work with, whether they're older or just coworkers, just trying to get as much knowledge, from that close circle as you can. Do it. And if somebody like Matt offers you a ride along, go freaking take that up. I do that for my students too. I'm like, hey, you guys want to come along with? And I've had a couple, and it was pretty enjoyable for all parties involved, but I don't get too many that take me up on it.
Yeah, I get people who email me all the time. I have a list, like in Facebook, of people who want to go on a ride along. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll get back to you. But since I bought the van and I've been building out the van, like I don't want to take anybody till it's fully set up, because part of the reason they want to go is to see how I set up a mobile van. And now I'm just like, oh, I need to wait till it's finished. And I've got like 300 hours in it, and I have lost all motivation to finish it. So if you're listening to this and I told you, you're just going to have to wait till I get motivation back.
Okay, that's going to do it for today's episode. Hopefully you enjoyed that discussion and got some really good information out of it. And again, this particularly benefits the entry-level person, the kid that's in school, somebody just starting out in the auto industry. And maybe that's you, maybe it isn't. If it's not, again, I encourage you to share this information or this episode with someone who is, so they can, again, avoid some pitfalls as they progress through this career, because hey, it's hard enough as it is. If we can save a little bit of struggle, I think that's a good thing. So other than that, I want to thank everybody for listening to the show and all the great feedback I've been getting. Really enjoy interacting and talking with people that have reached out to me. For real, it's really been a privilege to get to hear from people all over this industry. So thank you again. Other than that, let's get out there, start fixing the world one car at a time.